All right, number 10, just making the cut on the top 10 movies of 2012 list for Joshua Starnes is Killer Joe, starring Matthew McConaughey and directed by William Friedkin, back from the 70s. Friedkin, sorry.
I mean, he's been around. He's been making movies the last decade, but very much under the radar. But Friedkin's back, man.
He's a freaking good director?
He is a freaking good director. Even when he makes bad movies, he's a freaking good director. I feel, as a Texan, I am obligated to put this movie in my top 10. But it is what it is, and what it is very good. But it's as dark and grimy a crime thriller as you could imagine. Something that's born and raised in the trailer parks of Texas. You know, I'm not the only one who loved it. I think Roger Ebert just put out his big praise for it now that it's coming out on the video, and it is fantastic. And it shows Friedkin still got his chops.
Okay, and so this is another one of those movies that basically didn't do really kind of went unnoticed. I know it's kind of maybe the subject matter, but it does have a pretty good star-studded cast to it.
I think it's mainly because of who could go into it. It was eventually, after much going back and forth, it was rated NC-17, and for good reason, between the copious amounts of sex and violence, beginning with full frontal nudity with the very first scene, almost the very first shot of the movie. And they don't shy away from that. They get into, particularly in the last scene, when McConaughey's Killer Joe torments the family in their trailer home, and it gets into some very graphic stuff. And they don't shy away from it at all, which they shouldn't, because this is the subject matter and the type of story they're telling is very in your face, and to cut away from it probably would have lessened the impact, but that did not make it easy for a lot of people to go see it.
McConaughey, I kind of like his choices. He was kind of making very mediocre studio films for 10 years, and all of a sudden he's throwing out these not totally independent, but somewhat independent movies, I guess.
This is really a banner year for him. He stretched. He picked roles that he probably should have been picking 5 years ago that he's gone out to do. He did a lot of support. I mean, you could even argue, even in Killer Joe, where he's the titular character, he's in support as much as anything else, because it's really an ensemble, and it's hard to pick who the main character is. Killer Joe himself doesn't show up for about 15 or 20 minutes, and there's long portions of the movie where he's not around at all. But this was really a banner year for McConaughey, between Bernie and Killer Joe and Magic Mike. And Magic Mike's gotten a lot more of the notice because it's a larger, more successful film. But I think Killer Joe is his best performance this year. I think it's actually probably the best performance he's ever given. And he is one of the number one reasons why I rate it so highly and put it in my top 10. And I've been sort of lukewarm on him as an actor, but he really upped his game in this year, and in this film in particular. He is so in control and commanding in every scene. He is really the reason to see it. He just holds your attention every time he's on screen.
What separates this movie from other crime thrillers, especially this year, what was that Brad Pitt movie that kind of didn't work, and
Killing Them Softly.
Yeah. What separates this film from the rest of the bunch?
It has at its core, it has a very humanistic, philosophical core underneath the crime. The crime aspect of it, in most crime films, it's about the crime, and seeing the crime, the kind of seduction-like area of watching crime happen, and that's what draws them to, and that's what draws people to those movies. And those tend to be as far down as they go. They tend to be very surface-oriented, and when they try to get further down, they're saying the same thing over and over. Killer Joe is not like other crime films in that way. It has a very humanistic message underneath all the violence about them.
Yeah.
Interconnectedness, the search for human connection between people, and how that can both make people stronger and ultimately destroy them. It's a very philosophical film. It's a play. People might not realize that. It's the first play by Tracy Letts, who won the Pulitzer a few years ago for Osage County, which is getting turned into a movie right now as well. And once you know that, once you realize that, especially during the scenes in the trailer home, you really get that sense of it, and you get that sense of character and personality that you really have to carry off a play that you can ignore in a movie, which is why it is a crime film, but it's not your typical crime film. This is actually the second time that Friedkin and Letts have worked together. They did a
Bug.
Bug, a few years ago, as part of that in the hinterland part of Friedkin's career. That it's not as good as this, but you can kind of see the seeds for this building in it.
Yeah, nobody would have thought in a million years that this would be based on a play, but I guess it makes sense in hindsight.
Just think about all the scenes in the trailer home and imagine that that's the play, that that's the movie, that just the scenes in the trailer home or the movie. You kind of get a sense for what it's like, because they definitely have, and let's adapted his screenplay to, his play to the screenplay, but they definitely expanded what he had originally built into something new.
Okay, so what film, this is the 10th on your list, I'll throw a couple of films out, Silver Linings Handbook, Django Unchained, were they close to the top 10 list for you?
I think it just edged out Django Unchained.
Okay.
Silver Linings Playbook I liked. I didn't love it. But Django Unchained I really, really enjoyed. The only reason I picked these 10 above that is because Django was fun to watch, but it didn't have really anything underneath the fun. It was just fun to watch, and that was all, but there wasn't anything else to it.
So will Killer Joe get you had the number 9, what's the movie again, Cosmopolis, and then Killer Joe. Do you think they'll, this movies that, two movies that people didn't really see, do you think that's going to have, get a second shelf life on DVD, or?
I think Killer Joe will. I think, to a certain degree, Cosmopolis will, just because there are enough Cronenberg fans. They will go and search it out just because he made it. Killer Joe, I think, will, especially as it comes on TV and you get more news out of McConaughey's performance. If there was any if it was a fair world, McConaughey should get nominated for an Oscar for it. I think more realistically, he's going to get nominated for Magic Mike because it's the more socially approving movie. It's the wider, more well-known movie. And but he's going to really get nominated.
Plus, he takes his shirt off, and we like when McConaughey takes his shirt off. So
man, he took everything off in that movie. But I think it's really for those 3 performances that he's getting nominated. But because by the Academy rules, you can only get picked for 1 movie a year in a category that they're going to pick, the one that most people know, which is too bad because Killer Joe is actually the best thing he did this year.
Is he going to just stay in Texas and just make movies? Because that seems to be what he's doing.
Could do. Who knows?
There's a lot of movies going on in Texas. I know it's a big state.
Yeah, more often you get people driving right to the. There are in Austin usually all the time, but most people drive over to the east to go to Louisiana, which is actually where all the movies